Namaste. I am Himali Nalaude, and today we have with us a very special guest. The first Indian woman, rather, the first Hindu woman, who became Oxford University Student Union's president, Rashmi Samant. However, merely within a week, she was compelled to resign from her position, owing to the fact that she is a Hindu and that she is proud about it. On the same lines, Rashmi Samant has authored her book, A Hindu in Oxford, to narrate her side of the story. Hello, Rashmi.
Hello, Himali ji. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, so please tell us how's a life for a Hindu in Oxford, or what is the book all about?
Well, I think the book primarily sketches my journey from the small town of Udupi on the coastal Karnataka all the way to Oxford, how I made it and what the initial few days were. Few days were very euphoric, as it is to any new student, happy about the fact that she's made it to the #1 university in the world, and she's living that sort of a life which is touted as a dream in popular culture and media. So it was all that. And I think it wasn't really a matter of whether I was Hindu or not, because I was mostly invested in my own branch, which was Masters in Energy Systems, and it was a good life per se. My dharma is something which is very personal to me and not something that I go around touting everywhere. So I think it never came in the way of anything until I decided to run for president, and after that. So until then, it was all hunky dory. The initial few months, especially, were very nice. It was just euphoric. It was just overwhelming. But there were definitely undertones of realizing the sort of colonial institutions that most of these premier institutes are, and how they further an agenda which seeks to whitewash the sufferings of indigenous people, of people like our ancestors who had to go through centuries of subjugation and loot to make these institutes happen. It was a gradual learning curve that I had. I also realized that the university itself was built by the money looted from all of the colonies, and that it was formerly a training center for all the generals who got sent over to places like India to carry out the loot. So that was sort of the journey I had from euphoria to actually realizing the sort of colonization that exists there in academia, in popular culture, and how they push this intellectually into popular culture. So that was the first few months. And through that, my Hindu identity remains a very personal aspect of life, as you see in the book as well.
So, what exactly happened that after you were democratically elected as the president of the Students' Union, but then somehow out of nowhere your Hindu identity surfaced, and then things started to turn down for you. So, what exactly happened there after you were elected?
Well, I think it's a very interesting aspect because I get elected president in one of the most historic elections at Oxford, highest voter turnout, highest victory percentage margin as well. There are 5, 6 other candidates, and then it's a clean sweep victory, and everybody is very happy. Okay, the first Indian woman takes charge. It's also a moment of pride for Indians. Lot many people in UK also take pride in the fact that there's a living bridge between Bharat and the United Kingdom. I still remember the British High Commissioner to India writing about it as a living bridge. So it was all touted out around as a diplomatic success, as a relationship building success, and it was an overall good vibe. But moments later, I started getting bullied. I started getting extremely racist messages, which were, comparing my face to a black horse, and very demeaning messages, very targeted messages, which were clearly racist. But I just brushed it apart, saying, okay, maybe a few jealous sour grapes out there who are just sending these anonymous troll mails. But quickly it started snowballing into more. I could see the campus rumor mills and confession pages anonymously popping up hate messages against me. And very quickly it turned into digging about my past, as to who I am, what identity I have, what region I come from, where I did my undergraduate studies, who my parents are. It is very surprising that the history professor at the University of Oxford, it was not just kids who were involved at this point, it was also professors who got involved, who found out who my mother was, who stalked me to find out who my mother was, who stalked my mother. Can you imagine how criminal that is? And then found a very old picture of my parents, which had a Facebook photo frame with a picture of Bhagwan Ram, and it had a line saying Ek hi naam, ek hi nara, Jai Shri Ram. And then they started this whole campaign that, oh, she comes from coastal Karnataka, hotbed of Hindutva, she's a Hindu. Rashmi Samant, the Hindu president of Oxford University Students' Union, and that Oxford University is not ready for a Hindu president. So there was a litany of accusations thrown at me just because I was Hindu. It was told that I was racist, anti-Semitic, transphobic, whilst none of my old posts even remotely reflect that. I write about it in this book. There are multiple legal advices, there are multiple opinions from people of these communities, from the Jewish community, from the trans community, from the, wider community, who clearly say that there was nothing wrong in what I was doing or what I was saying, and that clearly the logic that they found was just that, okay, she's a Hindu, so she's guilty of all of these crimes. And the hate campaign got so bad that I started getting death threats. And I was put in a position where I was left with no help and no choice but to resign, with an active threat to life. So then I had to kind of take that call that, okay, let me resign. But I resigned, but I didn't, give up the fight. So I'm very happy that I continued to fight and say that, okay, what happened was wrong and that there needs to be something done about it. So the one thing I'm happy about is that it turned out in a way that it did later on, and we were able to have some good precedents set.
So your case happened, and some time after that, UK had its first Indian origin prime minister, a Hindu prime minister, Rishi Sunak. And again, there was another peak of anti-Hindu or anti-Hindu acts, or acts that were motivated by Hindu hatred. And we see Leicester incident and whatnot, where Hindus were randomly attacked, and we see regular people on the streets posting on Twitter that they don't want to be led by a Hindu prime minister, and their racism, their racist mindset is just overthrown all over. So, is there a link between these two incidents in the social perspective of UK, of how UK or the people of UK look at Indians even today, and the racism that exists there?
Well, I think stereotyping and vilification has been consistent, because that's the way it justified subjugation and, violence and everything unfair that they did to our people. And that sense of supremacy and that sense of justification still exists, of seeing us as lesser people who deserve to be treated badly. So every time we get a rightful seat at the table, those bitter feelings do crop up one way or the other. I still remember when Rishi Sunak was against Liz Truss for the prime ministerial position from the Conservative Party. He was the most eligible candidate to win. But even then, they picked Liz Truss, and the entire campaign was filled with hate messages against Rishi Sunak. And we know how colossally Liz Truss failed, and the entire economy collapsed because of her bad policies. And then they were compelled to pick him because they were left with no other options. But that's not the way it is. You need to pick anybody who's meritorious and not discount them for their identity. But unfortunately, we see that happening over and over and over again. Very recently, Rishi Sunak, as the Prime Minister, went into Cambridge University for a Ram Katha and said that he comes there as a proud Hindu and not the Prime Minister. And the very next day, there was an article in the Critic which said people like Rashmi Samant and Rishi Sunak are Hindutva flag bearers, furthering the cause of Prime Minister Modi everywhere. So they try to come up with weird logic to establish legitimacy to hating people like me, people like Rishi, people like even Narendra Modi, who take so much pride in their Hindu identity and vilify us to a point that anything constructive that we do for society, in society, is then discounted as non-existent. Even today, there's a very prevalent global narrative that Modi ji is fascist, while we know that it's not true. But just because you want to discount something great he's doing for the Bharatiya people, they resort to this ad hominem attack where they can discount the person doing it, and then their actions and the goodwill becomes invalid, so that our people remain in the past with that slave mentality, and we don't go further ourselves on this path of self discovery and regaining that self respect.
This sense of supremacy that there is in the Westerners, we see it a lot. Like it might be there since a long time, but now it is coming ahead more effectively. That it is very much spread over the academia as well. So, is there certain insecurity, maybe because of Prime Minister Modi, that is being struck that that the fact that Western sciences are somewhere built on the foundation of ancient Indian knowledge, that balloon is being burst. So, is that the reason why the academia is so involved in this?
Well, I think the game is all of global market spaces, and in global market spaces, the people who run the show take the most amount of money home. And the minute countries like India assert their self-respect, self-identity, and take over market spaces, then it becomes a very inconvenient position for Westerners to retain that monopoly. Westerners have retained monopoly by reducing other countries to secondary roles. Like India was made this capital of BPOs and secondary tertiary service sector for something that was primarily being done in the UK, so that our economy remains dependent on them and we just get a percentage of it. You can also see in the attitude that they displayed during the Chandrayaan-3 success. There was this entire movement that India is poor and they should concentrate on their poverty and not the space mission. But every space mission is a race to resources. Moon missions have been a race to find helium reserves on moon, which are, there are millions of tons of helium there, and it is considered the future of energy. And if we get there first, then everybody will end up buying from us for the rest of their life, and then who's poor now, right? So they try to attack our sense of self-respect, self-discovery, just so that they can remain rich. And they use crooked intellectuals to come up with all sorts of theories that attack our sense of identity. Because I think by the end of the day, it's all a game of self-respect and confidence, self-confidence. The minute you break that in a population or a community, you have an upper hand over them and you can forever subjugate them everywhere, starting from the market space, and remain rich. So it's I think a typical profit loss statement that they're trying to maintain by undermining our success, just because they're scared that they're going to be the ones poor in the future.
Again, since you mentioned about the Chandrayaan mission, so when ISRO made it a success, there was a renowned British news channel that claimed that UK has been funding India, and now that they were claiming a share in India's success, a monetary share, and they expect that India should return those funds that they have given. So, what is your take on this?
Well, I think it's a typical case of media misinformation and biased media reporting. India has not taken a single penny in aid as in like help, dole out, from the UK in the past couple of years now. What they claim is the British trying to invest in India. They're trying to invest in Bharat so that they can get better returns on their investment. That's all that the money is coming in here for. So there is no way that we are taking any dole out. So they need to stop spreading misinformation about what their money is being sent here for, A. And B, I think the budget of Chandrayaan was less than even the budget of the film Interstellar. So they're making more expensive movies than the entire budget of a Chandrayaan 3. And thirdly, I think if you're going to start settling score now, that okay, I gave you 2, you give me 5, then we need to start with returning the loot that they took away from India, which is literally in trillions of dollars. And if you calculate a rate of interest from the day that they looted it, then they'd have to sell their entire country and still fall short of returning what they owe us. So if you want to keep scores, we need to start from there. So I think these are the 3 sort of successive points, but I do believe that media misinformation plays a big role, and I've seen that in my personal life as well in this book through this thing, where media selects what story it wants to say to convince the people of a reality that is very convenient to them and their masters, and facts get left out, and the story that the people know is literally an agenda that the media house, their masters and the West want to push.
Few years back, a virtual seminar was organized based on anti-Hindu sentiments, dismantling global Hindutva. Uh, we don't see any other religion being so openly targeted that a global conference has been organized without mentioning who the organizers are. So you were one of the people who were very vocal about the agenda that was being run behind the conference. So what is your view on that?
Well, I believe that senseless vilification, that is vilification without any logic, is precondition to genocide. They did it to the Jewish people. They started spreading rumors about the Jewish people to condition the population that it's okay to persecute them. Similar things are being done about the Hindu community. If you try to look for logic, you will find none whatsoever. There is absolutely no logic in what they say. But unfortunately, they have the support of the media to amplify their message and to amplify this vilification into popular culture, into the psyche of the people, so that tomorrow it's okay to, attack a Hindu. It was okay to attack me just because academia has successively established that a Hindu is the villain. So then all of these ad hominem attacks become possible. And I think the end goal is to maintain Western supremacy. If we are not attacked, if our, advancement is not attacked, our leaders are not vilified, then it legitimizes all of our achievements. Today, what Modi ji has done for Bharat is nothing sort of exceptional. But if the West starts to acknowledge it, then their position in the global market space will start to crumble. Their supremacy in terms of economy, in terms of the global market space and the global space that they have built so carefully over the years will start to fall away. So the only thing that they can do in these conditions, when we are hardworking, we are coming to the table, and despite all attacks we are surviving, is to make us look like the bad people there and make it look like we are doing something absolutely illegal to be there. But I think it's up to our community to challenge these stereotypes, to challenge this vilification, because only we seek to gain from dispelling all these rumors. Everybody seeks to gain from vilifying us only. So they're going to keep doing it more and more and more again. We can't say that just because we have truth on our side or because there's logic on our side, that their arguments will fail. It does not happen that way. Just because they don't have logic in what they're saying and their hatred for us, their argument does not fail, because they bombard it so much across the world that it will end up harming us in the long run. I saw one of the characters attacking me say that Jai Shri Ram is a war cry, whilst we know that it's not a war cry and that it's a devotional this thing. Academia has established it over and over and over again that it's a war cry, that they've bombarded it without any proof, without any data backing it, but they've written about it, they've spoken about it so much that it is accepted for face value in the West. And then that becomes precondition to pulling down Hindus who are meritoriously somewhere. I won that presidency out of merit, and I was going to bring something that is going to forever impact our community and our standing in a global space. But then they were able to delegitimize it just because they could easily vilify us. So they vilify people to take away achievements, to take away their seat from the table, and to take away their aspiration to do more for their community, for their people and for themselves, just so that they can remain the masters. So I think that sense of, colonized stereotype and the vilification that they try to impose on it, that is the danger. A lot of us do realize that okay, it's what they're doing to us is bad and they shouldn't do it, but a lot of us through our conditioning and education system have internalized the fact that we deserve the vilification that we get, that that we are terrible people. We've internalized all the lies that they've told us. So then these conferences do become very dangerous, because there are many people who will still believe these people despite coming from a heritage that has suffered at the hands of these white supremacists, at the hands of these colonizers, at the hands of these terrible people. But I think the only way to do it is to stand up for yourself, for your community, and to make it a point that they cannot get away with the lies, with the illogical things that they say. So basically, I think it's very funny what they did at the conference. They said, okay, we are not against Hindu dharma, we're just against Hindutva. Then they said Hindutva is Hindu dharma, and hence both should be eradicated. So it's very funny how they say that they're not against everything just to divide the people, just to create a moment of curiosity in the minds of the people, make them receptive to their ideas, and then basically push their ultimate agenda by the end of it. So we need to know that they're against us, our people, our achievement, and our rise from the post, our rise from that colonial slave period, and that is not something that's acceptable and okay. And these conferences are just a way to attack on that sense of identity, which gives us pride and aspiration to do better for ourselves.
Another recent incident when you came to the front was from Udupi, when cameras were hidden in girls' toilet. So when all of that happened, there was a certain section of the media that portrayed you and kind of a product of the Sangha, and they also went and drew parallels between you and Nupur Sharma. So what is your answer to that?
Well, I'd like to say that there's a global sort of a universal playbook at enforced, which is very typical of the global leftist ecosystem. If you look at the leftist ecosystem, the leftist Marxist ecosystem at Oxford or at Udupi, they're all the same. Their operating procedure is just the same. What happened in Udupi was a crime. Hindu girls were being filmed. It was a religious hate crime. It was, a crime against women. It's a serious human rights violation. And I spoke about it as a crime because it was being brushed under the carpet just because of the religion of the perpetrators of this crime. And when I spoke about it, it's interesting that the police decided to question me rather than question the perpetrators of the crime. While I hadn't written anything that was new. It was already in the newspapers. So it wasn't even as if I was the first source of information for the crime. So it is very sad that across the world, justice is based on who the masters are and what is the identity of the victims, what is the identity of the perpetrators, and not simply on the fact that a crime has been committed and justice needs to be done. It is not based on what lies are and what the facts are, but based on what convenience is to the popular narrative. And this is something that I saw very closely during Udupi's case. And again, they try to vilify me just like they try to vilify me at Oxford. At Oxford, they tried all this whole game of racism, this, that, and everything. Here, they try to push this whole narrative that there is misinformation or it's a prank. They try to whitewash the crime as well. So they do this typical thing to disenfranchise the person who's talking about it, to scare them. Even here, they try to use the police to, scare me and try to get me to stop from speaking about justice. It's crazy how police, which are supposed to bring justice, have now become henchmen to causes which are politically convenient to the government of the state. And I saw very closely how this operates and how twisted justice has become in the 21st century for a community that's historically persecuted.
Have things like you just said, that the police didn't cooperate with you in the Udupi case. So has anything particularly changed in the state after the recent elections?
Well, it definitely feels like things have changed. The police took 1 week to register an FIR in a case which is so serious and requires suo motu cognizance. It took many of us to come down on the streets and protest for there to be a CID investigation. So that tells you about how much you have to even push to seek justice. And I think it's concerning that there is this kind of a state-sanctioned persecution of a community, and that they don't get the justice they deserve as common citizens, and that suddenly the victims are Hindu and not just victims of that crime anymore under the new regime. And I think that's very concerning, and as somebody who's lived and loved Karnataka, it is something that's very concerning for me.
Recently, a Congress spokesperson had called you that had termed you a dropout of Oxford. Would you like to address that comment on yourself?
Well, yes, I think I can show you something for that. Let me quickly look it up on my phone. Here is the description of Madam Indira Gandhi, and it says dropout, Somerville College, Oxford. So she, Indira Gandhi, is a dropout of the University of Oxford. Rashmi Samant is a graduate with merit from the University of Oxford. Rajiv Gandhi is a dropout of the University of Cambridge, which happens to be not far away from the University of Oxford. And that they could have a legacy of double dropouts, but we are a legacy of double graduates. So irrespective of how much they try to vilify us, take away our merit, and make us look like the villains, the facts are always going to tell you another story. We are so much more, we are doubly qualified and doubly capable of taking on challenges and the future of this country as compared to the legacy of rotten politics that they've left in our country. So I think it's quite interesting that they are bringing it upon themselves, the humiliation of their former prime minister, of our former prime minister who belongs to their party, by trying to rake up something that is non-existent.
26th November 2021 is a great day for you, a day you will remember for your entire life. Indian media has headlines on the same day about Malala Yousafzai passing out from the same university. So, does it feel left out by your own country on the same that they are not proud about the children of their own country? Does
Well,
it feel so?
It's interesting you bring that up because 26 November 2021 is the day I graduated from the University of Oxford with merit, and it's the same day as Malala Yousafzai, the Pakistani woman Nobel laureate who has passed out from the University of Oxford, and that the Indian media chose to paint one story as Pakistanis winning out there in the world and not simultaneously platform their own girl who's not just successfully graduated there, but also was their first Indian president. And I think that's very concerning and a reflection of our own media system, which continues to slave away to the whims of the Westerners, to the narratives and the agendas set by the Westerners. The book discusses this very bias that we have in our media. Right when the Oxford incident was happening, post my resignation, no media house covered the statement of the, Oxford University faculty who said Oxford is not ready for a Hindu president. No media house covered the fact that there is a British parliamentarian who filed a motion in the British Parliament saying that a Hindu student, Rashmi, is being bullied at Oxford and that it's not okay for that to be happening. That doesn't come in the mainstream media. The fact that there is a clear discussion in the Rajya Sabha at the Indian Parliament where two cabinet ministers are discussing this matter and sending their support to Rashmi Samant does not make it to the headlines. But three nondescript student societies, which are not even registered with the University of Oxford at the time, the Oxford India Society, Oxford South Asian Society and the Oxford Hindu Society, they put up a statement against me, and that is carried as the word of truth and the word of God by every newspaper from the West. You can understand why the West would do it. To the East. And it shows how much we lap up to their agenda, how much we lap up to their priorities, and how much of decolonization is still to happen in a lot of our systems. And when we will finally learn to wear our achievements on our sleeves, and wear our people on our sleeves, rather than glorify those agendas. And I think it's absolutely concerning, because the kind of the student clubs that I was talking, even tomorrow you could claim to be the News Bharati Club of Oxford and release a statement, and if it's convenient to them, they will carry it in every newspaper, they will make it a reference everywhere, they will make sure that the next time anybody Googles the particular topic, it's your statement which is on the top and not the truth. And this is the very unfortunate times we live in, where history is written by the victors and not the facts and the way things are done. Media tows a certain story that their paymasters urge them to, and how distorted sense of justice becomes as a resultant of biased opinions, institutional bias, and sort of these agendas playing at a very large level.
When we look out for Rashmi Samant on social media, we see you speaking very freely about Sanatan Dharma. Recently, Udaynidhi Stalin made a very controversial statement on Sanatan Dharma, and there are responses coming from all over about how he is right and how he is wrong. What is your response?
Well, Udayanidhi Stalin goes to eradicate Sanatan Dharma conference and speaks at a conference where the major theme of the conference is weapon to destroy Sanatan Dharma. It's clearly written in their agenda. His mere presence at that conference seeks an agenda of a political party which wants to push the genocide of the Hindu community. And his wordings of calling and comparing the Hindu Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, to a disease is very similar to what Hitler said about Judaism, about the Jewish people. And I think it's very concerning that such statements are being freely made in this country, and that we haven't learned from history what happens when such statements are given a free pass. And secondly, that there is a lack of protest from the Hindu community. That is also something that's seen, because all we are doing is talking about it for a week and letting it go, and that he is not receiving the number of legal cases that he should be for saying these things. So I think we should treat it more seriously and tackle it in a much more serious manner. So I think awareness among our own community is necessary, so as to counter these kinds of things. So I think it's very concerning that he would call for the attack on Hindus, and that it shouldn't be something that's just restricted to people like me and you who know about Sanatan Dharma, or somebody who takes pride in it, because it's going to affect everybody out there sooner or later. And it shouldn't be too late for them to realize that, and that there needs to be awareness about the ills of such statements with historical context.
Another controversy that is trending nowadays in India is the Bharat versus India debate. So you have experienced Bharat, you have experienced India as well. So do you think these are two different identities, and what is your take on it?
Well, I think India is a nickname that the British have given to India, and that Bharat is an entire civilizational discourse of who we are. And if we still want to be called by the nickname that our former colonial masters who made us slaves to continue, then I think it says a lot about our mentality and what future holds for us. But reinventing ourselves and owning up, it's not renaming, it's reclaiming, I feel, of our true identity. I think that is the need of the hour for us to actually declare ourselves free mentally, emotionally, psychologically from the former colonial influence. I think there's also a very famous phrase that goes, "What's in a name? Everything's in a name."
Now this might be a very personal question, but this is something observed about you whenever you give any social appearance, may it be in your traditional outfit or anything. You don't prefer wearing bindi that often, whereas you're a very proud Hindu. So, what is the thought behind it? Is it deliberate or what is it?
Well, it's interesting because I think it's a very layered answer. And I'm happy you asked this question. Firstly, I always wear a Rudraksh. And this is something I'm always wearing, and I feel that this is my form of expression, and that my faith gives me the freedom to express myself with the liberty that I want to, and it's not this rigid thing where you're only a Hindu if you wear a bindi. And I think that is a freedom that I love exercising in my life day in and day out, which teaches me the essence of Sanatan Dharma every day. Secondly, I do wear bottu, but I don't wear a bindi. So I put kumkum usually with a little bit of water because I believe that the bindi, the sticker, blocks your chakra while it's supposed to like activate it. It's supposed to be a conduit and not a blocking membrane. So I do prefer that. And I pick and choose when I want to, just exercising my free will that my dharma gives me so frequently. And thirdly, I think it's also because there are certain cultural nuances where unmarried women don't necessarily wear it very frequently as compared to a married woman. So this is a very, I think, regional cultural nuance which does exist. And it's been historical. It became more rigid along the times of invasion and everything, where people had to like distinguish themselves from other communities, and it became a rigid practice for all Hindu women to wear one. So I think there's that sort of a thing as well. And me being unmarried, I can exercise my right to not actually wear one. And there's a specific thing in the Konkan region, in the coastal belt, wherein unmarried women wear a half moon and not a full circle, and that it becomes a full circle as a bindi only when you do get married. So I think these nuances also do exist, and it's actually the beauty of the Sanatan Dharma that attaches me to it far more than any symbolism ever could.
Rashmi, so it was really nice talking to you. We wish you all the very best for your book. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you, and hope to have these conversations again in the future. Thank you. Namaste.
To listen to the entire interaction, do follow us on Spotify for the podcast and keep following us on other social media handles as well. And for more such content, keep visiting us on www.newsbharati.com.